do not understand human guilt. However, if any cat can, it will be Professor Pauswell, news anchor of the feline podcast Yowl. He presents it most days of this daily broadcast, and here has translated it into our English. My name is Melanie, and I will be reading his translation. I am very honoured to do this. Please be aware that this is his opinion and does not represent any real situation. It is an analogy of guilt seen from a cat's perspective. Please be assured that we do not in any way refer to any person directly or indirectly. Our characters and the stories are entirely fictional. Please also do not take these stories as in any way accusatory. It is all metaphorical fiction with very extreme examples, highlighting Professor Paul's stance as a cat observing how humans deal with guilt. These extreme concepts may be distressing to some people, but his viewpoints are never about blame. Cats in general do not judge. They only show possible consequences of decisions relating to guilt. Do bear this in mind as the metaphor grows deeper throughout the video. We recommend that you watch all of the explanatory sections, even if you wish to skip to the more distressing parts or less distressing parts of the opinion. This is, again, our opinion. Here we meet little Spice, the youngest of a litter of 5 ginger kittens. Spice is scratching himself a lot and looking increasingly distressed. Here is his human, Maria. She notices little Spice's behaviour and remembers that she didn't give him his preventative flea and worm medicine. She forgot to fulfill an important responsibility to him. Now she feels guilty, a horrible emotion. She wants the feeling to go. She has 2 choices. Maria chooses to respond to her error immediately and rushes to give Spice his medicine. He responds well. Her guilt reduces, and whilst he reverts to being a happy and well kitten, let's revisit poor itchy Spice and Maria's guilt. What will happen if she reacts differently? Let's see. The guilt over her error is horrible, such that this time she freezes up in shame, only able to sob from her emotional pain. Eventually, she manages to call her friends. They rush over to be with her as she is very distressed. They support her while she sobs with guilt. One friend even admonishes the scratching kitten for upsetting their sensitive and caring friend. Maria is so consumed with guilt, she's wallowing in it, and the only relief she gets is from the kind words and support of her friends. Her guilt is being addressed. Poor Spice gets very ill from not having his medicine. He lays down in the corner and sadly unalives. One friend of Maria notices and is shocked. She quickly picks up the animal and puts it in the trash bin, knowing that seeing it will upset her sensitive friend more. One trigger: cat fleas. One emotion: guilt. But 2 ways to respond. One is to treat the problem until it's resolved, or 2 is to distance yourself from the cause of the guilt and maybe draw on the strength and support of caring people to reduce the bad feeling, letting the source of the emotion worsen until relief from treating the source is left too late. This is the choice we face, humans, when guilt comes from something that can be fixed. We move on. The metaphor deepens, and I warn you, grows darker. A few months later, the kittens are growing into almost adult cats. Sadly, whichever route Maria took to deal with her delicate little Spice, he unalived anyway at some point. And Maria, the young woman, has to cope with both remembering her behaviour, the flea issue, how it was resolved, his passing, and her ongoing failure or responsibility to dutifully care for the rest of the litter. Again, she has two choices, always two. Every day of their lives and of hers and people of ours. Suppose she chose to learn constructively from her behaviour earlier, either continuing to respond to guilt well or changing from a harsh lesson where she allowed her kitten to suffer while she cared solely for her own needs. Whatever happened months back, she still had and has two choices. We see her here making that first positive choice on how she handles her guilt and her grief. She is a highly organised leader of a well-kept and content litter of young cats. All their needs and treatments, veterinary appointments, diet, etc. are marked clearly on a large wall calendar behind a desk holding a thick volume of a book on animal behaviour and signs of illness. The kittens play quietly, confidently, affectionately and happily on the desk and around her. Or Maria can continue in indulging in grief after her guilt from allowing Spice to unalive by her inaction months back. Maria now overcompensates, trying to reduce her guilt-riddled anxiety. The surviving kittens, the litter, are monitored by her excessively to the point of annoying them, distressing them. Her motives are good, responsible even, but should a kitten scratch behind its ear as cats do for just a few seconds? Maria has flashbacks of suffering little Spice. She pokes and scrapes the body of the playful kitten who dared to scratch its ear, digging her nails in as she searches for possible fleas, peering at its fur, ignorant of how healthy cats do scratch their ears often. She repeats her prodding with the other kittens, hurting and alarming them. She feels their ribs when she notices uneaten biscuits in their bowls. Are they too thin? Why aren't they eating? Maybe one of them is ill. One growing kitten sleeps, as they do, suddenly after eating. A little. No! Is it unalive? The snoozing youngster is not happy at being aggressively shaken awake. All that loose fur. Why are they molting so much? Sleeping, scratching, molting, playing, everything leads to Maria grabbing and peering at her charges. They don't get a moment's peace and also pick up on her anxious, neurotic, endless examinations. You get the picture. A year later, the young kittens are full-grown young cats. Let's see how Maria, who is again choosing to handle the guilt that comes with responsibility, is doing. Wow! No longer tied to a calendar, book, and visual prompts, Maria is now a calm and confident expert cat owner. She relaxes on her sofa amongst the now happy young adult cats. They are affectionate to their human and each other. They have free access to the outdoors from an open window and cat flap to explore their world. They are well groomed, content, in great condition, and approachable, knowing boundaries will not be crossed just to appease Maria's nervousness from guilt. They will continue to live full and contented lives and give and gain great joy to the young woman who they can trust, Maria. Or not. Yep, you guessed right. Another warning that things get dark. Maria's surviving kittens have grown into young adults. The other thing that has grown is Maria's guilt loop, thwarting the kitten's development into confident, healthy cats, mentally as well as physically. As new adult cats, they seem neglected and skittish. They avoid Maria and her persistent attempts at intrusive examination of their fur and bodies. The cats fail to attend to their permanently unkempt and raised fur, or they groom themselves repeatedly in patches. So often and intensively they show areas of furless, red, broken and inflamed skin. They hiss at Maria and at each other. They have no stimulation, no toys or access to the outside. Not even means to settle by a window to watch cat TV. Maria's furniture is scratched severely. Her unresolved issues with guilt over Spice's passing has left her so terrified for their safety she allows them no freedom. They are now fearful, neurotic cats. Maria phones their vet for the umpteenth time. As one of the cats sneezes once, her call is directed to an engaged message. So again she calls on her dear friends. They come over, they comfort her, but wearily. They are drained by Maria's constant neediness. They now question the quality of care she is giving her cats. Soon afterwards, they make their excuses and leave. She redials the vet, and this time she gets through. The experienced vet knows these cats and Maria very well. His concern is only for the cats. He tells her they are neglected, which shocks her. He carries on, informing her that animal welfare are going to visit her house to rehome the cats. By the end of the day, that is exactly what happens. Clueless Maria has worn out her friends with her endlessly needing reassurance from guilt. And with her cats now being taken from her, she is now alone. Her reaction to guilt has cost her everyone in her life and damaged those she felt guilty about. Now she's left feeling guilty, all alone, to ruminate and wallow in regret about what she's done to her life. What is going on? How can this very human, highly moral emotion of guilt be so destructive? Let's go into a cat-free analogy, which explores guilt and how humans respond further. Trigger warning. Although fictional, this gets very dark. Maria, like most of us, is a moral person. Moral people feel guilt. Guilt is a horrible emotion, very painful mentally. I'll start to open the idea of guilt more as a moral immune response. We will revisit this idea in the final two scenarios and in greater depth. Physical pain, especially if sudden or new, is a warning that you are doing something wrong. Soon, I am going to take the analogy of physical distress, representing moral distress, and the inherent warnings to take action further. As the last part is very dark, representing severe illness and disability, I ask viewers to accept this as an analogy to the consequences of poorly handled guilt. Also, remember this is extreme fiction. I certainly am not implying that it is wrong to call an ambulance if you are acutely very unwell or injured and alone. I also recommend that you remain being cared for in hospital if you are in need, and not that disability directly or indirectly causes isolation. My story is just heavily reiterating the analogy and consequences of self-serving guilt. Please use your judgment if you are currently feeling vulnerable. Let's crack on. Maria has a summer cold and is walking down the street feeling ill, sneezing and feverish. Her immune system is trying to ward off an invader. The analogy is of a bad situation being at risk of getting worse if her moral immune system of guilt doesn't lead her to choices for a more successful outcome. Her fever and sneezing are representative of her guilty feelings. Maria sneezes and accidentally walks into a tree, banging her head and causing her to fall. Guilt can stop you in your tracks. She badly scrapes her knees and lower legs. Guilt can bring you to your knees, and her bleeding is the loss of emotional energy to respond that can come with guilt. Passers-by rush over to help the young woman who has fallen. Remember, guilt can be temporarily relieved by the attention of others. Maria responds to this attention responsibly. She accepts help to get up and is open to the idea of going home and dealing with her illness and injuries by caring for herself. This compares to the same intentions as she showed when caring for Spice when he was unwell. Once home, Maria takes medicine for her fever and before sleeping cleans and dresses her injuries. She has dealt with her problems, that is, her guilt, well. We now see Maria, after a restful sleep, recovered and disposing of her unwell items, medicines, dressings, thermometers, symbols of her guilt. She washes, changes, and is about to go out feeling refreshed, energetic, and well, with no guilt weighing her down, no unnecessary baggage. But let's revisit this metaphor. There is a version of Maria making negative choices in this guilt analogy, leading to a devastating fictional conclusion. Here, Maria focuses solely on seeking comfort for her immediate pain, the guilt analogy, her moral pain, rather than addressing its cause. On sneezing, banging her head on a tree trunk, and falling over, passers-by come to help her. She welcomes the attention as a balm, enjoying it so much she doesn't let them help her up to go home and risk losing the attention. She soaks up every moment of it. Eventually, her helpers leave her alone on the pavement, with a warmer shirt to wear as night draws in. No one else comes. She gets worse, and now genuinely feels too unwell to move her legs, swelling from the start of an infection, or stand, her sneezing now a nasty cough. She's becoming a version of poor, ignored little Spice. Craving more comfort, she calls an ambulance, which she truly needs now. On their arrival, she is deemed to be in need of hospital attention, passively enjoying being helped, failing to help herself, the analogy of seeking comfort only in the moral immune response injury of guilt. Maria prefers the attention and comfort of others over thinking through why her problems, her guilt immune response, are escalating. Humans. Remember, this is fiction and certainly not a morality tale. In reality, always call for help if you are alone and with a head trauma, high fever, or severe bleeding. Maria, though, here relaxes and lets others care for her. Her moral immune response quietened as others take control of her life. She will not, refuses to, let go of her allegorical guilt, as she coughs from a chest infection now, from her journey to hospital by ambulance with attentive paramedics, through to doctors and nurses who clean, dress and redress her wounds often, along with her sputum drain containers. Maria's passive behaviour, doing nothing to help herself but simply seeking comfort from others, as with the example how she behaved with little Spice, becomes near farcical. As medical staff attend to her wounds and her now very severe chest infection, she insists on keeping all material from her coughing and bleeding, almost as trophies. The analogy being she is nurturing her guilt to be displayed when needing sympathy. Indeed, when the people who first helped her visit her in hospital, she shows them her bags as cues for more sympathy. This is symbolic of her hanging on to her past distress, her metaphorical guilt, demonstrating publicly how it is still hurting her. However, like most people, kind people, they are already drained from her endless neediness, and, on being shown her old mucus, infected spittle, and scabs on old dressings, her company is severely repulsed. Gagging, they quickly mumble a "wish you well" sentiment and rapidly leave. They are kind people, but for sure they will not be visiting Maria again. Ever. Everyone has a breaking point. What happened? Before we move on to her final tragic outcome, if we liken Maria's current predicament to the consequences of wallowing in guilt, the moral immune response, which demands action to alleviate suffering, that is not to be displayed as a direct excuse to invite comfort from others. The strategy she employs ultimately stops working. Her demands for sympathy and comfort from kind people results in their eventual weariness of the relentless pleas for validation from someone who never grows or changes from her self-proclaimed allegorical guilt. I'm inviting you to compare physical attacks on your body and its subsequent immune response on experience of trauma or infection, for example, pain, redness and swelling of a wound, headache after trauma or with a fever, sneezing, coughing, etc., to a moral immune response on noticing signs of distress, perhaps in a vulnerable dependent, maybe yourself, choosing to take action as you would for a physical warning. The choices you face are identical in essence, those being to confront the situation and seek to repair or minimize the harm, or alternatively, to morally run away, carrying and so nurturing your unresolved guilt. By indulging in the pain, seeking comfort from others perhaps, using friends for as long as they are there, as the comfort reverts to guilt as soon as they are gone. This response achieves no positive outcome. Friends grow weary and may start to avoid you as you remain stuck in the same moral looping hole. Your source of guilt, the vulnerable, dependent, or your own health worsens, which triggers further guilt, and you start to fester in this negative spiral, ultimately left isolated and alone. So, what will become of Maria? As I warned you, it gets very dark. These events to come are in no way intended to mock or even describe any real scenario. We cats want you to take care of yourselves. If you suffer trauma from any illness, injury, or disability, we do actually love you more than you even know. Following Maria's fall, because of a minor illness and then a subsequent injury, she prefers to indulge in the comfort of others, of a handsome young man. The result is her problems get exponentially worse. Whilst enjoying care, comfort and attention in hospital, her doctor came to tell her the results of her choices. Her lungs are now so damaged that she will need oxygen for the rest of her days. The wounds on her knees needed immediate cleaning and were not cleaned. Consequently, they are now so badly infected, the doctors had to amputate both legs from below the knees. Oh. Not actioning her distress early has cost Maria profoundly. Her self-indulgent response to her allegorical guilt has damaged her deeply. Not actioning her distress early has cost Maria nearly everything she values. Her self-indulgent response to her guilt has damaged her to the core. We finally see her alive, at home, in a wheelchair, and hooked up to an oxygen canister. Feeling her situation of being so very alone. Ironically, even now, wishing she had a cat. Well, that's it. Our moral immune response analogy. We'll discuss it a little more presently. However, these tales show how guilt, seemingly the most moral of feelings, can be convoluted into selfishness if indulged in without taking action. This final and very dark part of these stories is one I again urge you not to follow as anything other than an allegorical, metaphorical story arc. Let's talk about this. There follows a summary of this analogy, then a further explanation, and finally my views on guilt as a cat. Maria has not handled her illness and injury well. The guilt analogies. She chose the comfort of passively letting others care for her and heal her over her taking a minor cold and injury, her guilt analogy, seriously, choosing not to let her moral immune system, guilt, be assisted by her taking action, such as going home, cleaning and dressing her injuries, and resting after taking steps to get well. For example, mild pain relief to help her cope with her fever. Her moral immune system recovers, as does she, when the warnings are read as a signal to act, not to keep the bad feelings stored until they become putrid and even offensive to others, like her keeping the products of her coughs and injured knees as trophies of her suffering. We see here what happens when Maria focuses on her own feelings of guilt, rather than acting on what to do about it to resolve the cause. She just enjoys the comfort of passively letting others soothe her, whilst doing nothing to help herself or to resolve the causes of her guilt. She repels caring people by demonstrating repeatedly her old distresses. When the moral immune response of guilt is not acted on appropriately, it ultimately becomes self-destructive, as it eventually loses the support of others and turns inwards. Good people grow weary of endless, unrelenting demands for comfort and validation from someone who never actions their guilt never changes. As a cat professor in humanology, I am comparing physical of the body and subsequent choices of human response on experiencing pain and infection to guilt attacking your moral immune system. You're being negligent in your care of any vulnerable dependent, to your not responding well to your own infections with, say, a headache, sneezing, coughing, fever, or even falls and injuries. The two scenarios are near identical in essence. Your response to guilt can be on a spectrum of confronting and repairing the harm to running from the cause of the guilt whilst nurturing the feeling, as you perhaps draw on the comforting attention of other caring people whose energy you draw upon to soothe your negative feelings. Their comfort, though, only lasts while they are there. This response to guilt is never sustainable. I hope this never happens, but like Maria, you may also later need to cope with a vulnerable dependent becoming permanently damaged from these mistakes. This will trigger more guilt from a situation you now cannot change. Guilt that grows deeper and further inward. Pain is a powerful warning from our immune system to immediately protect the hurting area by both addressing the cause and assuring this cause will not harm us further. For example, if your cat scratches your hand, you pull it away. If you love your cat, but not pain, you watch its body language before it attacks you to understand what your animal is communicating. Dear humans, my conclusions as an academic feline professor in humanology. Guilt is, for most people, a deep pain, but a moral pain. Like physical pain, it drives you to action. If you touch something hot and burn your hand, you withdraw it. If your toddler tries to touch a bright flame, you quickly prevent them. If you don't, maybe because of a distraction, say a ringing phone, you feel guilty as your kid screams from being burned. When you are in any pain, sympathy is nice. Pain medicine helps, but only addressing the cause of the pain will have the greatest chance of ending it. Few people would endure chronic pain just for sympathy or medicine if it can be ended by actioning the cause. Yet people do exactly this with guilt. Feeling guilty implies you have failed a responsibility. Seeking relief from this failure only by seeking support from others and by focusing on lessening the guilt feeling only, not repairing the cause, is akin to holding on to pain and injury just for the attentive help of others. I advise with humility, as ultimately we cats do not experience or understand human guilt.